Great. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you everyone for coming. We're going to start out by posing the high-level kind of question that we look to answer in this project. How can we improve web browsing quality of experience everywhere? And so first I'm going to take you back maybe 2 years after the first HotMobile conference, 1996, and show you the first New York Times webpage. It's rather basic. There's just one image, not much content, Nick's Celtic advertisement. And then fast forward to today, this morning, you see a much different picture. There's many more objects. There's a video of the Cohen testimony in the middle. There's advertisements. There's weather updates. A lot more complex. And this is kind of anecdotal of an overall trend in the web ecosystem. We see increasingly complex websites. There's more content. There's more videos, images, style sheets, even fonts. And that is made for kind of a more appealing experience. Maybe whether or not it is maybe for questions, but it's certainly slower. And slower websites are bad for different parties for different reasons. Users gives them a worse experience. You don't want to browse anymore. You don't like the web page. And then for content providers, it can lead to a loss in revenue. Each second that the user waits for the page to load, they're more likely to navigate off or even X out of the page, causing the content provider to lose revenue. And perhaps on a whole, this has gone a little unnoticed as networks have continued to improve. Global internet connection speed increased 15% in 2017 as opposed to 2016. And this is kind of hiding the cost it takes to load these complex websites. However, it's not true for all users. There are users on poor networks, either permanently, satellite broadband connections, or on in-flight Wi-Fi, or on your mobile device temporarily. And so there have been certain solutions for this, either in the research realm or commercial realm. Amazon Silk, Google Flywheel, Google AMP for mobile pages, Polaris for fine-grained dependency tracking, or Vroom, server-aided dependency tracking. But all those, as I said, require dedicated infrastructure. You have to have servers close to the user to push content. You have to redesign the site to optimize for mobile pages, or prior loads of websites in order to determine how to improve the content. And so bring it back to the initial question, expand it a little bit. How can we improve user experience for any site, anywhere? And this question has some high-level goals that we want to answer as we approach it. We want to respect the design integrity of websites. We don't want to change the content, change what the content providers worked hard to create. And we want to dynamically adapt to network conditions. As the user is moving from their well-provisioned home network or work network to on a plane or even a McDonald's, we want the approach to be able to dynamically adapt to that. And finally, it should be easy to deploy, lightweight, no dedicated infrastructure, so standalone. And given those goals and moving forward from there, our approach is based on a very simple observation. First, I'll show you the Financial Times webpage, just viewed normally. And then if you zoom in on the page a little bit, you see a much different picture. There's less content, less images, and zooming in moves resources below the fold, particularly like those images on the bottom or the extra menu bars on top. And we liken this to kind of a magic trick. So we show you the main content on the page, what's happening in the right hand, and meanwhile I'm doing the magic in the left hand, loading the resources while the user is reading the headlines, and then hiding the load time in the scroll time. And so our approach, Scale Up, tracks network conditions and then dynamically adjusts the viewport to optimize for the web page. And this pushes objects below the fold. Below the fold or outside the viewport. In the image here, you see the visual viewport is what you're looking at, either in your browser or your mobile device. And then the web page is actually bigger than that. You're only looking at a small portion of it. And so we're pushing objects outside of the viewport, that's below the fold. It hides their load time in the scroll time of the user. And so those images load while the user is scrolling to see them. And the user then perceives it as improving performance, even though it preserves the site design and there's no overall big changes to the content. So moving from our approach to an instantiation of it, there's some questions we have to ask and answer first. What is the potential benefit of scaling? And then does it even improve user quality of experience? Do users perceive this as improving their experience? So we ran 2 experiments to determine the answers to these questions. First, we ran a controlled experiment to look at the potential of scaling up. We looked at 50 random websites from the Alexa Top 500 at 5 different scale factors, which I'll talk about in a second. And we mimicked in-flight Wi-Fi connection to kind of see how a user would react to this on a poor network. We looked at images above the fold, as in the Financial Times example, what showed up in the viewport. And then looked at quality of experience metrics, such as above the fold time, which is taken from newspapers when you were fighting for the coveted space above the fold. The first thing the user sees, it's in the viewport. And then page load time. We look at page load time in the paper. It's the overall time for all the content on the page to be loaded. However, I won't talk about it here, is just because of the observation, we don't actually change the page. There's no change in page load time. So images above the fold, we see as the scale factor increases, the number of images actually decreases. They're being pushed below the fold. And so from 90% scale factor, which is actually zoomed out a little bit, 100%, which is the normal, up to 150, which is very zoomed in, we see the corresponding number of images decrease. And so, based on our observation, then that should affect the above the fold time. And then it does. In this graph, we see the 90th percentile of results. Web pages are very fickle, and so the content changes often. So we look at 90% to kind of get a good sense of it. Again, as the scale factor increases, we see the above the fold time actually decreases. So users have to wait less time to see the initial content. There's less content on the page, it loads faster, and saves them time and saves providers revenue. So we have the results here, but how do users perceive this as improving their quality of experience, if it does at all? And so we ran a user study. We recruited 1,000 participants from Amazon Mechanical Turk with high quality assurance for lifetime approval rating and completed tasks. We showed them 3 videos of the same web page loaded at different scale factors. We showed them videos because of content will change across time on web pages. This has been done before with the iWork paper. It does it in order to control for the change in content as time passes on. We showed them 90, 100, 110%. Framed the problem for them. We're looking at scale factor. We want to see how it improves your quality of experience. And then ask them a set of questions after they viewed these videos in order to see how they perceived it. We looked at which web page loaded fastest, which one loaded slowest, and then which one did they perceive as actually looking the best while it was loading. And for the first question, loaded fastest, we see that 36% of users selected 110% scale factor as loading the fastest. There's less objects on the page, takes less time for it to load, and they perceive that as loading faster. As opposed to 190%, more objects on the page, they perceive it as loading a little slower, which is then seen in the second question, loaded slowest. 90% scale factor, 39.1% of users selected it as loading the slowest out of the 3 options. More content on the page, it takes longer to load, as opposed to 100 and 110%. And then kind of which one looked the best for them while it was loading, we see that 37.1% of users select 110% scale factor. So perhaps contrary to what you might think, the less objects on the page, less content, less cluttered, perhaps users experience it as looking better as opposed to the other 2 scale factors. So informed by these results, we instantiated ScaleUp into a Chrome extension and released it on the web store. It currently has over 1,000 active users. It tracks network conditions, latency, time to first byte, and bandwidth, and then dynamically adapts the scale factor to improve their perception of performance. And just as an aside, we're interested in characterizing poor networks such as in-flight Wi-Fi. So you see the buttons on the top there. They can input the information, and we can help characterize that, and they'll see a comparison of it with other networks. So in conclusion, we see that there are increasingly complex websites, and this leads to a bad user experience on poor networks, and just a minor application level adjustment can help their perception of performance. And this kind of opens up to some larger issues at play. Are there more ways to play on user perception for experience? More ways to kind of like have a magic trick of look at my right hand while my left hand is doing the trick? And then also, are web quality of experience metrics accurate enough for different networks, such as in-flight Wi-Fi or satellite connections? different sites and different users, in fact. So thank you very much, and I'll take any questions or suggestions you have now.